My fiancée confessed. She regretted leaving her ex. I canceled the wedding, and now she wants me back. I'm Ethan. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a paramedic. I was engaged to Chloe, 27, a primary school teacher. We had been together for 3 years, and the wedding was planned for the upcoming spring. I own the house, and she moved in about a year ago. Things started to change in February. Chloe became distant, spent more time on her phone, and guarded it as if she were hiding something. We hadn't had a problem with that before. If her phone rang while she was showering, I would answer it without drama, but suddenly she was always leaving it face down, taking it to the bathroom or disconnecting it if it was charging somewhere visible. When I asked if everything was all right, she would say it was stress from work or the wedding. I tried to trust her, but something didn't add up. Even so, I decided not to press the issue. I focused on working more. I started taking extra shifts to save for the honeymoon. We had talked about going to Hawaii because she had never been and dreamed of seeing the islands. I ended up working over 60 hours a week, which meant less time at home and less opportunity to notice the changes in her behavior. In the weeks leading up to the disaster, she wasn't the same. She still talked about the wedding, about our future, but everything felt mechanical, as if she were playing a role rather than truly living it. I kept refusing to see the obvious. I thought perhaps it was the stress that everything would go back to normal after we got married. I was completely wrong. One Tuesday night, we were going out for dinner at an Italian restaurant she had chosen. Nothing special, just a midweek date. I was looking forward to spending time together because we had barely seen each other that week. When I got home at 5 p.m., she was already ready, sitting on the sofa looking at her phone. I said, "Hi." She barely responded. I asked if she was ready, and she just said, "Yes," in a tone so flat it was as if she were doing me a favor. At the restaurant, they seated us at a table by the window. I asked her what was wrong for the 3rd time. Then she put her phone aside and looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face, a mix of nervousness and excitement. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Daniel wrote to me." Daniel, her ex-boyfriend from college. I felt a pit in my stomach. She told me he had found her on Instagram a few weeks ago. He told her he had been thinking about her and regretted leaving her, that they had been talking a lot, especially about how they never should have broken up. I asked if she had been texting her ex for weeks without telling me anything. She replied that at first it was just an innocent conversation, catching up, but then the feelings returned. What they had was different, intense, passionate. And then she dropped the bomb. "You know, Ethan, with Daniel I felt like I was drowning, but in the best way. With you I feel like I'm floating in a kiddie pool. It's safe, shallow, and boring. I can't help but wonder if this is truly love or if I'm just settling for you because it's the easy thing to do. Maybe Daniel is better for me." Just like that, she called me boring. She said I was a convenient option, that her ex was better for her. There in the middle of a restaurant, I stared at her for about 30 seconds without saying anything. She started to look nervous, as if she had just understood what she had said, but she didn't take it back. "Then there's nothing stopping you," I finally said. She went pale. I told her that if she thought her ex was better for her, I had no problem with her leaving to be with him, but not while she continued to live in my house. She tried to backtrack, to explain, but I had already made a decision. I left $40 on the table, stood up, and told her I was going home. I expected to see her packing when I arrived. The drive back was surreal. 3 years together, 6 months engaged, and in a matter of minutes, she told me I was her consolation prize, that a guy who dumped her years ago was better than me, the one who offered her stability and a house. I kept repeating her words in my head, drowning in the best way versus floating in a kiddie pool. Safe, shallow, boring, convenient. When I arrived, she was on the sofa crying, but I no longer had patience for her tears. I asked her to pack. While she was talking, I went to the kitchen and canceled our joint account from my mobile. I also called the bank to block any other access. It took her about 2 hours to pack. I just sat at the kitchen table and let her do it. When she was ready, she stood at the door with her suitcases. She looked at me as if waiting for me to change my mind. She asked if I wanted the engagement ring back. I said yes. She left it on the coffee table. Before leaving, she said, "You're going to throw away 3 years over one conversation." "You were the one who threw everything away," I replied. "I'm just cleaning up the mess." And just like that, it was over. She left, and I was alone again, in a silent house with an engagement ring on the table, wondering what the hell had just happened. The next day, the calls started. First my mother, then my sister Clara, then my father. When a wedding is 2 months away and your fiancé suddenly moves out, the news travels fast. I told everyone the same thing. Chloe chose to be with someone else, and I wasn't going to compete for the love of my own fiancé. My parents were furious in my defense. My mother wanted to know if there was another man. I told her about Daniel, and she exploded. She said Chloe was destroying something good for an absurd fantasy. My father was more practical. He asked if I needed help canceling the wedding vendors. Clara was direct. She called her a fool, and although simple, it lifted my spirits. The most difficult call was from Chloe's parents. Her mother called me crying, begging me to try and fix things with her daughter. She said Chloe was just scared of the wedding, that doubts were normal. I tried to explain that this went beyond that, but she didn't want to listen. Her father left me a voicemail saying I was giving up too easily, that relationships required effort. I didn't respond to either of them. What was I going to tell them? That their daughter called me boring and easily replaceable by her ex, that she had been emotionally cheating on me for weeks. They wouldn't want to hear that anyway. The most complicated thing was our group of friends. In a few days, they started texting me to find out what had happened. From the beginning, I decided I wasn't going to badmouth Chloe, but I wasn't going to lie to protect her either. So when someone asked, I just said, "Ask Chloe about Daniel." That was enough. People aren't stupid. They could connect the dots. And deep down, I wanted her to be the one who had to explain herself, to be the one to say why she threw everything away for someone from the past. Within a week, the whole group, about 15 people in total, knew the essential details. Reactions were mixed, but most were on my side. All my male friends completely agreed with me. They understood why I couldn't stay with someone who basically confessed that I was her plan B. Some women told me I was being too radical, that maybe I should have considered couples therapy or given her time to clarify her feelings. But no, I'm not going to attend sessions to convince someone to choose me over her ex. I wasn't going to wait for my fiancé to figure out if she wanted a life with me or with another guy. That's not how relationships work. The worst part was dealing with everything related to the wedding. We had already made deposits. The venue, the catering, the photography, the DJ, the flowers. A disaster. Some vendors were understanding when I explained the situation. The photographer, for example, was empathetic. She told me she had been in the business for 20 years and had seen everything. She only charged me a small penalty. Others were not so generous. The event venue kept our entire deposit, arguing that there was no time to re-rent the date. The catering even tried to charge me for the food we had ordered. In total, I lost about $8,000 between cancellations and non-refundable deposits. $8,000 to discover that the woman who was going to marry me thought I was boring. The strange thing is that I never asked Chloe to cover a single penny of those losses. I could have taken her to court to split the costs, but I preferred to cut everything off completely. Losing that money hurt, of course, but it was better than continuing to deal with her. And that wasn't even the most complicated thing. The hardest part was informing family and friends that the wedding was canceled. Every call was a blow. Everyone wanted details, wanted to know if there was any chance of reconciliation. The strangest thing was the reaction of some of Chloe's colleagues. 3 teachers from her school wrote to me, not to defend her, but to see how I was doing and tell me quite clearly that she had made a big mistake. That made it clear to me how things were being handled in her workplace. Apparently, Chloe had told them we had simply drifted apart, that our goals no longer aligned, the typical line to look good, but they are teachers, not fools, and they surely saw beyond her version. Besides, if she was acting as strangely at work as she was at home, they were probably already suspicious. A couple of weeks after she moved out, a rumor reached me that she was posting things on social media with phrases like, "Follow your heart and don't settle for less than you deserve." That infuriated me like few other things. She was making it seem like I wasn't good enough, that she had grown and left me behind, but I didn't respond. I didn't publish anything to give my side of the story. I didn't try to clear my name publicly. I thought the truth would eventually come out on its own, and getting into a virtual war with my ex-fiancée wasn't the least bit interesting to me. The hardest part was getting back to the routine in an empty house. For over a year, I had gotten used to having someone to come home to, someone to cook with, watch a series with, or simply talk about the day. Suddenly, the silence became overwhelming, so I threw myself into work. I took all the extra shifts I could. Staying busy helped, and the extra money wasn't bad considering the financial loss from the wedding. Thomas, my ambulance partner, knew what I was going through and was incredible. He covered for me when I needed to call vendors or resolve pending issues. The other colleagues also supported me. Several had gone through divorces and told me that, all things considered, I was lucky to have discovered the truth before signing a marriage certificate. They were right, but it still hurt. Almost a month after everything blew up, I started to feel like I could look forward. The shock and anger were subsiding, and I began to think about what to do with my life. Maybe travel somewhere I always wanted to go, perhaps renovate the house, or simply focus on work and let things flow. And just as I was starting to regain my balance, things took an unexpected turn. For 6 weeks after the breakup, ironically, my life got much better. It sounds weird, I know. But once the initial ordeal passed, I realized how much weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I was no longer tormented by her distant attitude or her obsession with the phone. We no longer argued about guests or floral arrangements. I could come home without having to analyze every word I had said during the day. I blocked her number and all her social media accounts as soon as she left. If she tried to contact me, I never knew. And frankly, I didn't want to. She had made her decision clear when she told me Daniel was better for her. She could go with her college ex and leave me alone. It was then that I started chatting with Natalie, a nurse in the emergency department. It was casual at first, conversations between shifts, but she was nice, smart, and had a great sense of humor. And most importantly, zero drama with ex-boyfriends. The difference was enormous. Natalie laughed at my silly jokes. She was interested in my day. She remembered things I had told her. Those small courtesies that Chloe had stopped having long before we broke up. I wasn't looking for anything serious, and she understood that. We were two people sharing good times without pressure, and after so much stress, that was a relief. One day, while tidying up some things at home, my friend James called me, laughing out loud. At first, I could barely understand what he was saying. "Dude, you're not going to believe it," he blurted out between laughs. It turns out he works with a guy whose girlfriend is friends with one of Chloe's colleagues. Small world, lots of connections. According to his contact, Daniel had broken up with Chloe. "Your ex is all alone," he said, still laughing. Daniel dumped her? I sat on the sofa trying to digest the information. "How did he dump her?" I asked. He used her for about 6 weeks and then told her he didn't feel the same anymore, that he needed to be sure of his emotions or something like that. The absolute nerve. After all that epic love story about how their connection was so strong and real, Daniel had used her as a pastime and discarded her again, just like he did in college. According to what James was told, Daniel was direct. He told Chloe that getting back with her made him realize they had both changed too much, that what they had was pure nostalgia, and that he didn't see a future together. He could have thought of all that before breaking up an engagement, but no. And to top it off, it seems she didn't take it well at all. According to James, she was calling him constantly until he finally blocked her. I felt a strange mix of emotions when I found out. Part of me felt vindicated, as if everything I had suspected about Daniel was true from the beginning, that sooner or later he would end up hurting Chloe. Another part, I admit, wanted to laugh at the irony. But above all, I felt relief. Relief that I had dodged that bullet. In the following days, more details reached me from different sources. I was told that Chloe had been very active on social media, posting phrases about learning to love oneself and recognizing one's own worth just before Daniel dumped her. Suddenly, all her posts disappeared, and she fell into complete digital silence. Apparently, she was also saying at work that she was discovering what true love was, that she had never felt so happy. Her school colleagues initially supported her, but when the truth came out and they learned that Daniel had only used her, many felt uncomfortable with the way she had handled everything. My sister Clara commented that Chloe's mother had called our mom crying, saying her daughter was having a hard time and asking if there was any chance I would talk to her. My mother very politely but firmly told her no, that Chloe had made her decisions and now had to face the consequences. A week after James's call, I was grocery shopping when I ran into Olivia, a mutual friend we had. She had been at our engagement party and was even going to be one of the bridesmaids. The encounter was awkward, but she was very kind. "I just want you to know," she said, "that most of us think you acted with complete correctness. What Chloe did is inexcusable. You had every right in the world to walk away." It was comforting to hear. Sometimes, when you're caught up in a situation like that, you doubt if you overreacted or made the wrong decision. But having someone who knew both of us confirm that I did the right thing gave me enormous peace of mind. Olivia also confirmed what I already suspected about Daniel. Chloe truly believed he would drop everything to be with her. She even talked as if they were already planning to move in together. It was completely delusional. Daniel lived about 3 hours away with his job, his routine, and probably other women he was dating. To think he would abandon everything for a woman he had already dumped once was absurd. That's what happens when you cling to a fantasy based on nostalgia and emotional infidelity. You convince yourself that your ex is that perfect person you let slip away, when in reality, they already showed you once that they didn't want to be with you. Shortly after, Chloe tried to contact me. Since I had already blocked her number, she started calling from others. I didn't answer any. Then she went directly to the fire station where James works part-time and asked him to give me a message. She said she was sorry and that she had made a terrible mistake. James, without mincing words, told her not to bother him anymore. He later told me she looked rough, as if she hadn't slept or eaten in days. A part of me felt pity, but a larger part thought she deserved every second of that suffering. Since she couldn't get my attention that way, she changed her strategy. She posted a long kind of testimonial on Facebook about our relationship and breakup. I didn't see it directly because I had her blocked, but Clara sent me screenshots. It was a complete misrepresentation of the facts. According to her version, I never truly loved her and didn't know how to handle her past love life. She said I abandoned her just when she needed me most, and that I wasn't prepared to face the problems of an adult relationship. Not a single word about Daniel, not a mention of the fact that she called me boring and convenient compared to her ex. Nothing. Just a story where she was the victim and I was the villain. The comments, however, quickly turned against her. Many of our mutual friends openly questioned her. One wrote, "Didn't you leave him for your ex?" Another put, "That's not how I remember it happening." Even people I didn't know commented that her story didn't make sense. She ended up deleting the post a few hours later, but it was too late. Everyone saw that she was trying to clear her image at my expense, and most didn't believe her. That's when I understood she was desperate. When someone resorts to inventing things on social media to make their ex look bad, it's because they've hit rock bottom. And I was sincerely glad not to be in that chaos anymore. 3 months later, my 30th birthday arrived. I'm not one for big celebrations. For me, it was always just another day. But in my family, they feel differently about important dates, and they weren't going to let me hide just because I had recently become single again. In the last few weeks, I had been going out more often with Natalie. When I told her about the birthday, she was excited to meet my family. That already seemed like a good sign to me. On the day of the party, I woke up in a good mood. 30 years old, with my own house, a stable job, loyal friends, and someone by my side who didn't think I was boring or convenient. It wasn't bad, considering the emotional place I had been just a few months ago. Natalie arrived around 3 p.m. with a spectacular chocolate cake she had baked herself. She remembered I once mentioned how much I hated the artificial taste of industrial cake frosting, so she decided to make it from scratch. Gestures like that speak much louder than they seem. My mother adored her from the first moment. They spent about 20 minutes talking about cooking and recipes. My father, who was grilling burgers, even invited her to try his famous secret sauce, something he doesn't do with anyone. Clara pulled me aside and whispered that she liked Natalie for me, which was shocking because she never liked any of my previous partners. The difference with Chloe was enormous. She always seemed to be fulfilling an obligation when attending family gatherings. She was polite, yes, but distant, checking her phone the whole time, and then complaining about how long everything had been, or that my father told the same stories over and over. Natalie, on the other hand, seemed to genuinely enjoy herself. She asked my mother to tell embarrassing anecdotes about my childhood. She laughed at my father's bad jokes. She played cornhole with Thomas and moved around as if she had been part of the group forever. Around 6 p.m., we were all sitting around the fire pit my father built the previous summer. Good food, good conversation, and some co-workers telling funny stories from past interventions. I thought, this is one of the best birthdays I've had in a long time. Certainly better than last year's when Chloe spent the whole day glued to her phone ignoring me. And just then, there was a knock at the door. At first I thought it might be a neighbor, perhaps asking us to turn down the volume or move a car. It was Saturday afternoon, and yes, we had been quite loud, but when I opened it, there was Chloe, standing on my porch with a forced smile and a wrapped gift in her hands, as if absolutely nothing had happened between us. "Happy birthday, Ethan." I just stared at her in silence. There was something different about her, as if the weight of the last few months was visible on her face. She was thinner, or perhaps just unkempt. She had dark circles under her eyes and a tired expression. Her hair, shorter, seemed to have been cut in a hurry or at some cheap salon. She feigned confidence, but it was clear she was desperate inside. "What are you doing here, Chloe?" "I brought you a gift. Can I come in for a minute?" Behind me, the conversation in the garden faded. The guests were probably wondering who had arrived, if everything was okay. The last thing I wanted was to ruin my birthday with this kind of scene, especially with my family and Natalie present. "You can't just show up like this without calling," I replied. I know, but it's your birthday and I feel bad about how we ended things. I just wanted to give you this and if we could talk for a while." She extended the gift as if it were a peace offering. Surely something she had bought months ago when we were still together, before she decided Daniel was a better option than me. Everything seemed unreal. My ex-fiancée showing up at my party after telling me I was boring and predictable. After leaving me for another man. And after that man also left her. Talk about what? About us? About how foolish I was? About how much you miss what we had? I let out a laugh, and that threw her off. "You miss what we had? You mean that boring, convenient relationship? The kiddie pool one?" Her face flushed. She was probably expecting those words no longer to hurt me or that time had softened them. But you don't forget when the person you love makes it clear that you were only their second choice. She tried to backtrack. She said she was angry when she said it, that she didn't really mean it. But we both knew she did. No one throws out comments that specific and cruel if they haven't thought about them more than once. Just then, the front door opened behind me, and Natalie stepped out onto the porch. "Everything okay here?" Chloe's expression was a mix of surprise, indignation, and fury. In seconds, she went from hopeful to distraught. Her look said it all. I shouldn't be with someone new, much less with someone who looked as self-assured and attractive as Natalie. "And who is she?" Chloe shouted, her voice shrill. Natalie introduced herself with complete composure, immediately deducing that she was Chloe. She was polite and neutral. She didn't fall for provocations or get dragged into the drama. She just acknowledged the situation and maintained her composure. "You're already with someone else," Chloe screamed. "It's only been 2 months. Actually, almost 3, I corrected her. 3 months since you decided to go back to Daniel. And yes, I'm dating someone who actually wants to be with me." That completely destabilized her. She started shouting that I never fought for our relationship, that I replaced her as if she had never meant anything. It was typical projection. She was the one who destroyed what we had. But now I was the villain for moving on with my life. Natalie remained by my side, uncomfortable, but firm. She didn't intervene, didn't defend herself, or enter into absurd discussions. She let Chloe sink alone in her own spectacle. The shouting caught attention. My father appeared from the side of the house, assessed the scene with a look, and asked Chloe to leave. When she refused and continued shouting, Clara also came out and was much more direct. She told her to leave immediately or they would call the police. My family had never entirely liked Chloe, but out of respect for me, they always remained cordial. Now that we weren't together, they had no reason to keep pretending. Clara, especially, never had much patience and didn't bother to hide it. But Chloe wasn't planning on leaving easily. She went into a kind of emotional collapse, realizing that her grand romantic gesture wasn't going as she had imagined. Perhaps she expected that by showing up with a gift, I would surrender, forget everything, and take her back. Instead, what she had was an altercation in my yard with my family watching and my new partner by my side. Nothing like the redemption scene she had surely idealized. She finally stalked furiously toward her car, but before getting in, she turned one last time. "This is ridiculous, Ethan. Don't you think it would be easier if we got back together? We have 3 years of history." I watched her from the porch. Her makeup was smudged, a gift in her hand for a relationship she herself had destroyed. Just 3 months ago, she had been my fiancée. Now she was a stranger, emotionally overwhelmed in front of my house simply because I had dared to move on with my life. "Easier for whom?" I replied. "Because for me, it's pretty easy like this." She got into the car and sped away, burning rubber like a spoiled teenager. I went back to the party. Natalie squeezed my hand without saying anything. My family, though annoyed, soon put the incident behind them. The rest of the night was surprisingly pleasant, as if the episode had only been a strange pause in the middle of a happy evening. A month after the birthday episode, a rumor reached me. Apparently, Chloe had moved back in with her parents. Without someone to share expenses with, she couldn't afford a place on her own with her teacher's salary. The irony was clear. She had walked away from a stable relationship with someone who had his own house and a solid career, all for a guy who only used her for 6 weeks and then dumped her. I also learned that she had taken a leave from work. I don't know if it was something she decided on her own or if it was suggested by the school after her behavior started to become erratic. In any case, it couldn't have been easy to explain to her colleagues why, after being engaged, she suddenly moved back in with her parents and was single. James kept telling me all the gossip, even more than I needed to know. I found out from him that Chloe had not only tried to contact Daniel again, but she was also reaching out to other ex-boyfriends, as if she were going through a list of failed relationships, trying to see who might still be willing to take her back. It's sad if you think about it coldly, but that's the price of burning bridges for no valid reason. The most absurd thing was finding out how Daniel reacted when he learned that she showed up at my house on my birthday. Apparently, someone told him about her little visit, and he was quite annoyed. He called her unbalanced and was saying around to mutual acquaintances that he was grateful to have gotten away in time. The same guy who convinced her to leave me was now speaking ill of her to anyone who would listen. But that's how guys like Daniel are. Very skilled at seducing with words and putting fairy tale ideas into someone's head, but the first to disappear when things get complicated. He painted her an epic love story, as if they were destined souls to be reunited, and then disappeared as soon as he got what he wanted. And of course, now she was the problem. Honestly, I stopped paying attention to everything related to Chloe quite quickly. I had more important things to attend to, like continuing to build something authentic with Natalie and focusing on growing professionally. That whole experience taught me what I really want in a relationship. Someone who chooses me from the start, not someone I have to convince that I'm worthwhile. Approximately 6 months after our breakup, Natalie and I decided to live together. She was practically spending all her time at my house anyway, and it made sense economically too. But most importantly, it felt right. I didn't have that feeling of uncertainty or fear of commitment. With the right person, those decisions flow. They don't feel forced. A couple of months later, I ran into an old colleague of Chloe's, Olivia, the same one who had previously told me I had handled the situation with great maturity. She mentioned that Chloe was back teaching, but at a different school on the other side of the city. According to her, she needed to start over, away from those who knew what had happened with Daniel. She also mentioned that Chloe had been asking about me. She wanted to know if I was still with the nurse, as she called Natalie, and if I seemed happy. The mere fact that she was still keeping tabs on my life through third parties was a clear sign that she wasn't as well as she pretended, but it was no longer my business. I had turned the page. I was building a new life next to someone who genuinely wanted to be with me, and I wasn't the least bit interested in the chaos Chloe now had on her hands. Some people learn from their mistakes and mature. Others simply repeat the same wrong decisions and wonder why their lives don't change. I'd bet that wedding dress she bought is still hanging in her parents' closet, a costly reminder of the future she gave up for an illusion. Meanwhile, I was moving forward next to someone who saw me as a partner, not a backup plan. A year after that breakup, Natalie and I got engaged. Nothing scandalous or theatrical, just a quiet proposal during a trip we had planned together. And it was then that Chloe finally broke the silence. A long message arrived from an unknown number. She must have used someone else's phone because I still had her blocked. The text was lengthy, full of apologies, explanations, and pleas for one final conversation. She wrote that she had started therapy, that she had realized leaving me was the worst mistake of her life, that Daniel was just a mirage and that I was the real deal. She affirmed that she thought about me every day and was deeply sorry. She insisted that she was now willing to fight for us and that she wanted to see me to discuss a possible reconciliation. I didn't respond. I didn't even mark the message as read. Chloe had already made her thoughts clear the day she chose to leave. There was no need for her to say anything else. The message arrived too late, when everything had already been said and done. Perhaps she thought there was still something she could cling to, some part of me that hadn't closed the chapter, but that wasn't the case. I had moved on with my life, not out of spite, but because I understood that I deserved to be with someone who values me from the start, without doubts or comparisons. I was no longer interested in reliving old mistakes or giving space to ghosts of the past. Chloe was a harsh lesson, yes, but a necessary one. She taught me that love is not begged for or imposed, that when someone truly wants to be with you, they don't leave at the first sight of something better. With Natalie, I found the complete opposite: tranquility, commitment, clarity, someone who didn't need to lose me to realize my worth. With her, I learned that when love is genuine, you don't have to prove anything because everything flows naturally. Today, I look back without resentment, but also without nostalgia. There are no open wounds, just scars that remind me why I value what I have now so much. And while some continue searching in circles for what they lost due to carelessness, I am walking forward with someone who decided to stay from the very beginning.